Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni wanji, namaste, jumbo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jed Lee, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We are coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you would join us in our mission to help all families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to tell all of your family and friends about the show. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcast. Join us right now from Grand Rapids in the great state of Michigan. Our guest is here today to celebrate his picture book. It's called Crunchy Leaves, My First Hearing Aids. Please welcome to the show, Kenn Heyder. Kenn, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you very much. I'm excited to be.
I'm really excited for you to be here, too. Crunchy Leaves, My First Hearing Aids. What was the inspiration for this book?
So, my son's name is Jackson, so I decided to name the book Jack and the Crunchy Leaves, My First Hearing Aids. So, about a year and a half ago, I went to an audiologist and I had a hearing test. I've been married for a long time, and my wife always asked me, she's like, well, you can't hear things? What do you mean you don't hear that? I said, my hearing's fine. So to prove a point, I went to an audiologist and I had a hearing test, and she said, well, you have some pretty significant hearing loss. So that was alarming to hear. So that was a lot to process. So I came home and told my wife, and I said, see, I have an excuse. That's why I can't hear everything that's going on. So it was good that I wasn't ignoring her. So she's like, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, this is pretty shocking. I've worn glasses almost my entire life, and I feel like there was a stigma behind hearing aids, so I had to come to terms with the fact that I might need them. So just like anybody does, I did an exhaustive amount of research on the internet about hearing aids. How do they work? How do you hide them so people don't know you have them? And then I narrowed it down, and I got a pair, and it was amazing the things I could hear. And I thought, instead of feeling sorry for myself about having to get hearing aids, how would a little kid feel if they had to get them? So I decided just to start writing some stuff down about maybe writing a children's book. Mm-hmm. Then I purchased a couple books on how to write books, and I did some of the things they said. And about 6 months later, I told my wife, I said, hey, I wrote a kid's book. She said, you did what? I said, yeah, I wrote a kid's book about hearing loss, and I want to make sure it's, we help remove some of the stigma around it, and we talk about how little kids would feel if they had to get hearing aids. So from that point, I looked for an illustrator. I found an awesome one in Ohio, found an editor, and I thought, well, how do I publish it? It's an exhaustive and long process to deal with a publishing company because, they're bombarded with requests, right? So I looked up Kindle Direct Publishing on Amazon. Mm-hmm. I said, well, I can do this. So I started pulling the pieces together over a couple months. I started writing different drafts of it and sharing it with friends that had small children and, changing some things, getting feedback from my wife. And one thing led to another, and I was able to publish a book talking about hearing loss. And, it's a pretty underreported epidemic in the United States. So many children, so many kids wear, earbuds, AirPods all the time, and, they may not have them at reasonable levels. So whether it's genetic or it happens from loud noise exposure, there's millions of kids that the CDC says, 12% of kids that could suffer from hearing loss that are under, 19. They say 15% of all adults have it. That's almost 40 million people in the United States. So I thought that I'd write a book to help out with that.
That is an incredible statistic that I don't think many people are aware of. 12% of kids under 19 have significant hearing loss. That blows me away.
Yeah, the the more I researched it, just like, what do they call that condition where you learn about something and you see it everywhere, frequency illusion. So now I start seeing things about hearing loss and hearing aids everywhere. So I start reading and reading and reading, and I find all these great groups that help kids and families out, whether it's Hands and Voices, Piper's Key that gives books out to children with different kinds of disabilities. And I just started finding this whole community that existed, even, online groups where adults were getting hearing aids. Because I didn't tell a lot of people I wore them for months. And then finally a few people at a time I told, and they didn't even notice. My full-time career is I'm a realtor. So I deal with dozens and dozens of clients all the time, and nobody notices you have them. And, I'm kind of on the outside where I'm like, well, I wish you could notice them more, or you could customize them like glasses. You wear glasses, I wear them, change the frames all the time to look different. You don't have that option. And I thought, well, that might help kids too. So I'm just exploring, how this impacts kids and how it can impact your education, not hearing.
Yeah.
It's almost along the lines of having poor vision in school. I remember when I got glasses, and I was amazed at, this is how carpet looks? Well, you can see the leaves in the tree? So I wove a lot of the things that I experienced into the book.
Wow. You talk about the stigma attached with hearing aids, and there are people in my life that I love that I'd be willing to bet had some hearing loss, and they are very reluctant to have a hearing test. And I also am old enough to remember that there was stigma when I was a kid around people wearing glasses. Certainly there was a lot of teasing and there weren't as many people wearing glasses when I was young as there are now. Probably for the same reason that, the people weren't getting their vision checked as they should and weren't getting their vision corrected, or people were hesitant to wear the glasses, Why do you think, because you've really dove into this a lot, why do you think that you experienced that stigma, especially since you had already been wearing an aid to help you see? Why do you think that you had this big resistance to seeing or examining whether or not there is a way for you to hear better?
I struggled. It was very shocking when I sat down with the audiologist and she showed me a diagram. And then I tried a pair on in the office, and it was overwhelming to hear the different sounds that I'd been missing. And, selfishly, I thought, well, I'm not 80 years old. Why would I need hearing aids? I don't work in an airport where my hearing's constantly exposed. I'm not a musician where I hear loud sounds all day. So I just was in denial, and quite honestly, I'm super happy when I started sharing the journey of writing the book with friends. People I hadn't talked to in 10 or 15 years said, oh, my child wears hearing aids, or, my sister's child wears hearing aids, or they have an implant to help with hearing. And I felt better and better about it, and I really wanted to make it important. So not only did I write the book and base it on some of my own experiences, but, then I added a coloring book to help kids associate with it more. Mm-hmm. I talk about in the book, first of all, I had a great illustrator that helped, my son's going to be a senior in high school. So I sent the illustrator some pictures of my son when he was 8 and my wife. And I said, hey, can you kind of base the characters, and this is what I'm looking for in the book on him? And he did a great job. And so I, told the story through my son being that age to help out. So I talk about some of the things that stood out to me is when I got my hearing aids, and I didn't understand that you could hear the air blowing through a vent in your house. I was like, oh, you're supposed to hear that. I didn't, we have an aquarium in my son's bedroom, and I didn't know you could hear that 20 feet away bubbling. Mm-hmm. So just the things that I guess I didn't even know I was missing out on.
Yeah. Fascinating. One of the things I love is I'm visiting your website and looking at some of the illustrations from your book. It looks like you do a deep dive in explaining to kids in the book what hearing aids are, how they work, how they're fitted into your ear. It's interesting that you don't have a background in writing, that you said that you're a realtor. Where did I know the inspiration for the book was your own journey through hearing loss, and then imagining what it would be like with a kid and thinking back to the days when you first started wearing glasses. But where did the thought that you could write a children's book come from? Because a lot of folks, even a lot of folks who go and they get their MFA and they study writing, they still sit down and go, oh, no, but I'm not good enough to be a writer. And here you are, you said, hey, this is something I want to do, and you made it happen.
I've always had a hard head. My wife can attest to. We've been married for a long time, and I'm sure my parents can attest to that too. And I just thought, well, why can't I do this? What's stopping me besides myself? So I just started writing stuff down. And then, just like anybody that's researching something, I Googled as much as I could. I bought a few books on writing children's books and understanding, like the length and how I wanted to tell the story. So I just thought the only thing holding me back would be me. So I just started writing stuff down, and then I started a little storyboard of what I thought the pictures in my mind looked like when I was writing the story. And then I reached out. I found some great artists and editors and book formatters on the Fiverr website. Then I thought I'd pull it together, and my wife was extremely supportive, and I shared it with some of my friends. And, my wife has a really close friend, Debbie, who writes traditional books through a publisher, detective novels, based on a detective in Grand Rapids. And so I picked her brain a little bit before I even talked to my wife. And I gave her a draft of the story, and she thought it was great. And so that, made me want to go and share it. And I guess I just, my job is to talk to people and help them find a home. What's different than explaining hearing loss and trying to draw awareness to it? So I just formulated what I thought I wanted it to look like, what a storyboard would look like, and then just got to work on it.
Awesome. Well, I have to give you credit for a number of different things. First off, we do have a lot of authors and aspiring authors who listen to the podcast. So I want to tip my hat to you that you took the step to have your book edited, professionally edited. And, when we talk about, how important it is for a book to be edited, we're not talking about giving it to your wife who teaches fifth grade English, looking for typos and misspellings. And, editing a book is a very specific skill. You want to make sure you don't have typos and that the words are in the right order. But being an editor, it's a much, it's something that I can't articulate properly this morning, but it is an important thing for an author to have their books edited for so many different reasons. I'm also really impressed by your, to use your words, your hard-headedness, because I'm sincere, because I think that that's a wonderful thing. There are so many kids, we talk here on the podcast about how we can inspire our kids to go and to make their dreams come true. And sometimes what it takes more than anything else is the grit and the resiliency, the hard-headedness that you talked about, that just, this is something I want to do, and it would be great if someone told me and gave me permission to do it, but if there's no one around that's going to give me that, I'm going to do it no matter what. And I think that's really important for any kids, but for also any adult out there, because we all have dreams and we all find excuses why we can't make those dreams come true.
Yeah, thank you very much. And, sometimes your own worst enemy is yourself. And I mean, just what's stopping you from, learning a new skill, learning a new language, going on a trip someplace you've always wanted to go. I mean, if anything's taught us in the last 3 years, take advantage of all the time and opportunities you have. It's important that we take our son lots of places to experience things. One of the best things we did is take him 3 years ago to Washington, D.C. and see all the monuments and, to the Hoover Dam. I want him to experience those things and see what's out there. My wife was fortunate to grow up across the country, a lot of elementary school in San Diego and then Tennessee and South Carolina. So the experience she had with different cultures and different places is, one of the best things about her and the experiences she has. And we wanted to share that. And I guess I just wanted to get across, well, the only person holding you back is yourself. So just start chipping away small.
Yeah.
I started chipping away, about the structure I wanted to have. And I looked at how you publish a book, and you're right. I'm not a copy editor. What do I know about that? So then I researched, okay, well, you need an editor to scrub your story and make sure you're getting your points across. Okay, well, I wanted to check into an illustrator. I interviewed a bunch of them, and, one of my son's favorite cartoons when he was 8 is Phineas and Ferb, and I told him I wanted to model kind of that type of animation. And then I found a formatter that, really brings the book together with the cover, the credits. And then when I published it and, got a proof in my hands, it was great. And, if it helps one parent or one kid understand that there's nothing wrong with wearing hearing aids and you're missing out on stuff. Mm-hmm. And, that makes me feel better. And, sharing the story and seeing it in person with my son and my wife, that made me feel like this could help somebody else out.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the image, both visually and auditorially, of the crunchy leaves, and imagining what that would be like if I had never heard them for the first time, and then putting on a pair of hearing aids and then walking in the woods and hearing those leaves crunching underneath my feet, hearing the twigs break underneath my feet. Those are sounds that we take for granted. I'm fortunate in my life right now. I actually still hear them when I'm walking in the woods. I hear them and I enjoy them. I'm guessing a lot of people, they kind of phase them out. They don't even hear them anymore. But that image, as I said, it would just be incredible to have gone a certain number of years in my life not being able to hear those subtle sounds and then suddenly hearing them. What a gift that would be.
Yeah, I thought about how could I paint the picture of what I was trying to get across. So you think about holding your hands over your ears and you're walking through some crunchy leaves, and then you pull your hands off, and I mean, you can hear them, sure, and I could always hear them. And I thought about when you were a kid and you ran through the yard and it was fall and the leaves were crunchy, and that was so much fun, and making a pile of them and jumping in it. So that was a visual I wanted people to understand and then relate back to the hearing. So that's why I talk about in the book, running through the yard, or being in the audiologist's office and hearing the heat come through the vents, or hear the door chime. I live in a neighborhood where I'm fortunate enough where an ice cream person drives through, right, on a weekly basis, and the kids all run out to the street. I never heard really the ice cream truck coming, and my wife would say, well, did you hear the ice cream truck coming? And, my kid could be a half a mile away and he hears the ice cream truck, right? And runs out when he was little. So I wanted to give real life specific examples of things I experienced, whether it was crunchy leaves, the bubbles from the fish tank, the sound of fizz from a soda can opening. So I thought that would help relate, and those were things that, quite honestly, I felt and I experienced on a different level.
Yeah, I'm curious now that Crunchy Leaves is out and that you had that first copy in your hands. Do you plan on creating more children's books? Are you going to turn Crunchy Leaves into a series?
So that's a great question. So when I originally put out Jack and the Crunchy Leaves, my first hearing aids, I just wanted to get it out there. And then I thought, well, why wouldn't I make a coloring book that could help kids understand the book and highlight, just like you said, some of the different types of hearing devices, some of the experiences. So I had the illustrator turn all the illustrations into coloring pages. So then I put that together, and then I made sure I had it on a Kindle. So I really think it's important to focus on this and share the message of, hearing loss through Jack and the Crunchy Leaves. But, quite honestly, I probably did write down about 15, 20 other ideas that I think would make great books that maybe Jack could partner with his friends on. Different types of conditions that we don't draw enough focus to. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So I do have a whole bunch of stuff rattling around in there that I did write down, but I think it's important to share this and help spread this message, in the short term. And I came across your podcast. I just heard the one about, the fried rice and marinade, right? So that was an awesome interview about, the experiences he had growing up. And I thought that was a great book. And, there's a ton of different, you have over 1,700 episodes. So there's a lot of different books featured on here. That was a very specific, interview you had where you talked about different cultures and trying different food. Mm-hmm. I thought that was great. And then I thought, well, this is a pretty specific, niche condition too. And I want to draw some awareness to it and just have your child's hearing checked.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's so important. We have had authors in the past talking about hearing loss, talking about cochlear implants, and also talking about how there are a lot of kids who are born hearing and then experience early hearing loss that goes undetected for years because, again, no one is checking. We go to the doctor for our physicals every year, and we go every couple of years to the eye doctor to get our vision checked. But I'll be honest with you, I can't remember the last time I went to the audiologist. I don't know what I could be missing out on.
Yeah, you're exactly right. There's less of a stigma attached with vision, going to the dentist. But then you think about it, when not only is the last time you had your hearing checked, what about if you could think of 10 people that you're close to or that you talk to on a regular basis, when did they have it checked? Right. You get inside a super cool booth. You can even do these online through a lot of the hearing aid manufacturers. They have apps. You can take a hearing test online. It's very simple, and it's not the same as sitting in an audiologist booth, but it could give you a grasp if you're missing some frequencies. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's all free.
Yeah, this is going to sound like a silly question, Ken, and that's what I do in my life. So now that you've experienced, you have the hearing aids, and you can hear so many more things that you weren't able to hear. Are there ever times in your life when you go, "Yeah, I'm going to shut these off. I don't want to hear this stuff anymore"?
You're absolutely correct. So the first few weeks I had them, it's overwhelming, right? So a lot of times I don't put them in until, I've been awake for a few hours unless I have to leave the house right away. And sometimes I do take them out just to get a break, but as an adult, it can be extremely overstimulating. Mm-hmm. So I can imagine as a child, making sure you communicate. It's okay to take them out for a little bit and give your ears a rest, per se. Yeah. But yes, it did become overwhelming for the first month or so. Yeah. And understanding, just like getting a pair of glasses, getting used to seeing all these things. Sometimes you get a little bit of headache or you have to adjust to them. But yeah, it absolutely was overwhelming for a while. Yeah. And it still is. When I go to a restaurant or go to a sporting event, I need to turn them way down, just because of background noise. My son plays lacrosse in high school, so when we're outside, there's a lot of wind. So I need to turn those down because I can hear the wind. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. But you never turn it down when your wife is speaking to you. I do not. She may think so, but now I have a legitimate excuse, right? I legitimately could not hear you all these years.
Well, Ken, tell us where we can go to find out more about Jack and the Crunchy Leaves, My First Hearing Aids.
So, obviously you can view the book and the coloring book on Amazon by searching for Jack and the Crunchy Leaves. You can see it on Barnes & Noble as well. You can visit my website, KennHeyderBooks.com. You can follow us on some social channels, Instagram at Ken_writes, or on Facebook at Kenn Heyder Books. You can reach out, send me an email if you have any questions, about it, or I was fortunate enough to have an audiologist reach out and order a couple dozen copies to give out to kids that are going to experience hearing loss, or maybe they got their first pair of hearing aids.
Yeah.
So, I'm fortunate enough that, my library system in West Michigan, the Kent District Library, ordered copies. People are going to be able to check out. So that's great.
Wonderful. We've had a great time speaking to the author of Jack and the Crunchy Leaves, My First Hearing Aids. Our guest has been Kenn Heyder. Ken, thanks so much for being with us.
Hey, thank you very much for the opportunity to talk about children's hearing loss and all the work you do helping with getting kids in front of books and parents and kids in front of their books. Always loved when we read Mercer Mayer to our son and all the pigeon books. So I think it's very important, and I appreciate the time and effort you gave today.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast and will join us for the next exciting episode. If you want to make sure you don't miss a second of the show, please be sure to subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Stitch Radio, wherever you get your podcasts. And also be sure to visit readingwithyourkids.com and download your copy of the Reading With Your Kids online magazine. It's free. It's available at readingwithyourkids.com. Just click on our blog. Before we go, I want to make sure that I give a big thank you to my team: Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Madison Dairies, Soji Franklin, Monica Rivera Sosa, Ann O'Leary. I want to give a big thank you to my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me, and most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today, and as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.